to make the study of knowledge belonging the world easier. As a simile, we can call the direct ones, that is, the ones acquired by living in the midst of events, stem knowledge, and the indirect ones, that is, the ones acquired by observing others, branch knowledge, both of which are powerful vehicles, causing the development of essence knowledge according to their capacities. For example, if the knowledge a child gains who puts his hand in a fire by feeling the pain of the burn himself is the stem knowledge, the knowledge he gains by observing the suffering and reactions that occur out of his friends burning his hand becomes branch knowledge. And by this example, we have said that stem knowledge will give shortcut results, in comparison with branch knowledge in the constitution of essence knowledge. On the other hand, there is no possibility of mankind living each event by themselves and gaining only direct knowledge. So, the shortages arising out of this impossibility are complemented with branch knowledge. As knowledge feeds essence knowledge, in between there are some assisting principles that provide strengthening. And one of these is the causality principle. In the universe, no event is without a cause. All events, relations, influencing, integrations, transitions, disintegrations of universe, in short, all formations, transformations and deformations of matter occur, in accordance with the necessities of the great evolutionary cause, and as the cause and effect of each other, and as interconnected. And this is a manifestation of the great causality principle in universe. After all, as we state at every point of this book, all motions are based on causes and arrive at effects. No occurrence without a cause and effect can be thought of. Mechanisms belonging to the integration and disintegration of all relations in the universe work in accordance with this principle. No event is unattended and self-contained. Every event is connected to other events, directly or indirectly. In this way, the whole universe with all of its parts is woven with an immense network of connection, and the knot points of these connections are the cause-effect necessities of the causality principle. Each event is the effect of the higher one and the cause of the lower one. Of whichever event the cause is unseen, this is because the cause of that event has not been known. The causality principle is a strong support of the knowledge of comparison, which is used by comprehension that takes the most significant role in the transformation of events into essence knowledge. After giving this short explanation of the causality principle, it would be helpful to mention the reciprocal situations of comprehension and the knowledge of comparison. Knowledge of comparison is the way of adapting comprehension to the causality principle. Comprehension develops as much as it is able to adapt to the causality principle in universe. Comprehension that remains alienated from the causality principle displays that much deficiency in consigning and appreciating the endless relations that exist among the endless combinations in universe and remains accordingly in backward and simple states. To a child who cannot comprehend that his hand will burn if he puts his hand in a fire, the authorization to play with fire is not given. This is because his comprehension has not yet attained the merit for such a deed. His comprehension has not yet adapted properly to the causality principle belonging to the relations of this matter. And the thing that will allow this adaptation will be his knowledge of comparison. For that child to enter the knowledge of comparison, he will experiment a few times to hold fire in his hand, and his hand will get burnt each time. Each time his hand is burnt, some intuitions about the causes and effects belonging to the relation of fire and hand will gradually emerge, and with the help of his knowledge of comparisons, these intuitions will become knowledge. In this way, the comprehension and consequently content of essence knowledge will increase. We call this procedure refining experience. This knowledge we have given indicates that the causality principle and knowledge of comparison, which increase essence knowledge, render their functions only via events. In the absence of events, neither can the causality principle be studied, nor can the knowledge of comparison be understood, nor can their connection to each other be of question. Therefore, to continue on the topic of knowledge of comparison, it becomes necessary to elaborate first on events. One of the first, even the very first, of the basic materials which are necessary to acquire knowledge and essence knowledge, and consequently to attain evolution, is events. It is necessary to live directly or indirectly in the midst of events. Manifestation of events depends on a great number of causes. However, above anything else, events occur in accordance with the laws of cause and effect. Actually, to be able to bring about essence knowledge, events depend on the degree of comprehension that can be employed in adapting cause-effect relations in them through comparison. Fire burns the child's hand, the child has felt this pain. The burning of his hand has been because of his holding the fire with his hand. If the child can comprehend the cause-effect connections between the events gathered around this feeling of burning, the result he will get in regard to the essence knowledge will be one thing, and if he cannot, it will be another thing. That is, knowledge is established and reflected to the spirit according to comprehension's adaptation to the cause-effect connections in that event. The events ensuring knowledge in accordance with the needs of that being are arranged by the assisting beings and put on the path of man, or for the same reason, assisting beings have the same being to do it by sending influences to it. That being causes these events by itself, by its own acts. 4. The order and sequence of these events preparing that person's knowledge are subject to a great number of individual and communal plans, and various orders, which can only be executed by superior comprehensions and powers. When a man needs to take part in a required event, assisting beings activate the earthly craving components of his conscience, or they have him encounter events outside of his choices, and so, direct him to various acts. And this is to make him taste the bitter results of his selfish acts and, in this way, to prepare values for his essence knowledge through leading him to the knowledge of comparison. For example, if a man needs to feel the sufferings a murderer feels, such events are put in his path so that he cannot contain himself in the face of these and kills a man. Therefore, causing such an event with a serious result by himself is not a thing that has come about arbitrarily or accidentally, since his ability to enter the knowledge of comparison necessary for him to reanimate the developmental preparations he decelerated is possible only to the degree that he is able to comprehend that he himself has acquired the merit for the events. And the thing that will allow this is his killing a man. May he kill that man so that his repertoire of knowledge and comprehension, which has not been valuing the duty component of his conscience more than it does for the earthly craving component, more correctly, which has been too weak to afford it, may get sufficiently strong and enriched by the knowledge of comparison he will engage because of this event, and after that, may he meet the possibilities of acceleration in his development by directing his will towards the duty component. On the face of the thousands of similar needs of the being, these forms of help and intervention occur and myriad events are brought about. Beings in duty therefore assist in bringing about various similar events in the evolution of those humans who have not strengthened sufficiently to orientate to higher components of their conscience duality, more correctly, who have not been able to free themselves from the influences of their lower level knowledge, and so remain weak in elevating the equilibrium level of their consciences. Thus mankind, under the anguish and suffering caused by these events, learns important lessons out of the knowledge of comparison in which they engaged, and each of these lessons sows the seeds of their essence knowledge. By that means, that being prepares its comprehension for the higher values belonging to the realities and development of higher levels. That is, it converges toward the knowledge of duty of its superhuman stage. Because of this, mankind has been from time immemorial considering these painful events, regarding tests and trials as redeeming factors accordingly, which is correct. Thus, we refer to the lessons learnt from the results of these tests and trials as refining experiences. Each of these is an evolutionary material. We have said that both the causality principle and the flow of events under the light of this principle, by directly or indirectly having mankind live in the midst of these events, leads to the knowledge of comparison. As a matter of fact, knowledge of comparison emerges as a significant component in the increase of essence knowledge. The most efficient assistant of knowledge of comparison is pain and suffering. Here, it is necessary to point out that suffering has a significant role in acquiring essence knowledge. The obvious point is that knowledge of comparison most often feeds essence knowledge and comprehension by the way of suffering. Sufferings to be experienced in the spatium are valuable assistants of the knowledge of comparison the being will engage in during the accounting of their unconscious knowledge. We will give a world example about this. This example contains all the subtleties of this topic. Let us take sexual selfishness, which is the hardest to overcome and can encompass many stages according to its degree, and is the subject of many tests and trials, of many advancements and of many degenerations in the world. A man loves a woman just to satisfy his flesh and his bodily desires. And he is to overcome his material selfishness in the following way. The day will come when the woman he loves has had enough of him and loves another man. And, in facing this trial, this man is defeated to his earthly cravings to the degree that he will kill his lover. The reactions he will give continue varying on gradually up to the end of the stage. Now, let us take another man in a similar situation, who is in the more or less advanced stage of his conscience. His lover has abandoned him and started to love another man. This man, who has been advancing to the heights of his stage of conscience, will accept this without resentment. And maybe he will not hesitate in giving his help to that woman in this regard. So here, the comparison of a murder and a virtue, of selfishness and altruism are face to face. The man who murdered, if he is not in a state to attain the knowledge of comparison by his own comprehension, because he murdered, then it means that he is not, then the assistance of external interventions will start to arrive at him, so, in this way, may he attain the comprehension of this comparison. And only by this knowledge of comparison will the result emerge, and that man will be able to spend the efforts to overcome earthly cravings. As such, imagine that he murdered her with a knife. Following the murder, he will be imprisoned. Here, we would like to list a chain of comparison tests. This man, first of all, will engage in a mandatory comparison by the suffering of his dissatisfied sexual desires and pleasures. As a child got his hand burnt before a fire, he will start to feel the initial bitter results of his desires, not unlike fire. In this way, he will encounter a comparison that will teach him the factors causing his suffering. Let us say this has not chastened him. The prisoner will get old in the prison. His hormones, power, sexual activity will weaken and he will become powerless in his potency. When he is in this state, this man will not feel his selfishness only in particular relation to his flesh and nerves, but now can only imagine it. If he has not learned sufficiently from the previous lessons, if he has not benefited sufficiently from the knowledge given by events, then this prisoner will be knifed by another prisoner during a fight, or he will have such an accident that some sharp object like a knife will sink into his body. And he will then feel an intense material suffering because of this. Here, the subject of our example will naturally engage in a mandatory comparison. Because he is devoid of sexuality, he is not directly a prisoner of his flesh. He now has mandatorily passed through that reality. Moreover, he survived an accident which made him relive the memory of murderer's test by comparison. Now, in the face of this situation, it is not possible for this being not to learn a lesson and not to attempt spending efforts to acquire necessary knowledge. Now, we give an objective observation of the above example. A rich, middle-aged man, seeing that the young girl he has had a love affair, who has grown tired of him and turned away from him, and all the things he had done to regain her attention are in vain, has resorted to violence, and waits to catch her and then mutilates her body with 25-30 knife wounds. Following this murder, he evades capital punishment and is confined to the ward of a mental institution reserved for mental patients who have committed murder, and stays there 12 years. One day, he is attacked by another mental patient with whom he gets along very well in the same ward, and during his mental agitation this patient mutilates his body with a hoe at 25-30 places. This observation, again, displays all the sequence of the comparisons. Of course, sufferings and pains are felt in degrees, and will be felt by both the child who burnt his hand in the fire, and by these men who killed their lovers out of frustrated desire and died respectively in a prison and in a mental institution, encountering similar murders to the ones they committed. This will engage them in the powerful knowledge of comparison, and this knowledge will prepare their essence knowledge and comprehension, which are necessary for them to reach further levels, in the way we have outlined above.